as its strategy to roll out after COVID-19 cases drop. Committee under MKN monitoring foreign workers' compliance with CMCO. Good afternoon, I'm Azlani Adani. Welcome to Updates at Noon. Malaysia will be ready to roll out its COVID-19 exit strategy phase once the number of daily new cases drop below the current double-digit trend. Health Director General Datuk Dr. Nohisham Abdullah said this would be a prerequisite for more sectors to resume their operations, albeit with stricter standard operating procedures (SOPs) in place. Elaborating further, Datuk Dr. Nohisham said maintaining a lower number of cases was possible if the country continued to monitor and implement measures to curb COVID-19 infection under the Prevention and Control of Infectious Diseases Act 1988, Act 342. He said these measures include those monitoring the country's borders. He also stressed the need for existing SOPs to be followed even after more sectors were allowed to operate.
Kita dapat memantau dan juga pengawasan kita berterusan, tetapi kita membuka lagi banyak sektor supaya kita pastikan semua sektor dibuka, dan kalau semua sektor telah dibuka dan pemantauan kita berjalan dengan baik, mesti kita kekalkan 2 digit ataupun single digit, maka kita dah bersedia untuk exit strategy. Yang inilah kita katakan soft landing, iaitu supaya rakyat Malaysia patuh kepada SOP. Dan semalam kita tunjukkan modelan kita, berarti kita tahu rakyat patuh kepada SOP.
On 8th of May, Datuk Dr. Nohisham said the Conditional Movement Control Order CMCO is a soft landing approach imposed by the government before the country could enter its exit strategy for COVID-19. The CMCO, which was enforced on 4th of May, allowed certain economic sectors such as construction to operate. On another note, Dr. Nohisham said the cause of the spread of the new COVID-19 cluster, the Cheras apartment cluster, is likely to be due to home visits before and during Hari Raya Aidilfitri. He also said the actual cause which has resulted in the cluster was still being investigated. Elaborating on the cluster, the Health General said the first case was detected through screening of students of a Tahfiz Centre, which was conducted in collaboration with the Department of Islamic Development Malaysia, JAKIM, and the Health Ministry, MOH. However, investigations showed that none of the students, teachers or staff members at the centre had history of attending the Tabligh rally in Sri Petaling. He also said that so far there are 6 cases from the cluster, which include 3 residents of the apartment and 3 others not living in the vicinity.
Setakat ini, seramai 120 orang telah dikenal pasti dan disaring, di mana 6 kes positif telah dikesan, 76 kes adalah negatif COVID-19 dan 38 masih menunggu keputusan. Selain tindakan active case detection yang telah mula dilaksanakan di Pangsa Puri tersebut, beberapa langkah kawalan penularan jangkitan COVID-19 turut giat dijalankan. Misalnya, pengasinan kontak dan aktiviti pensampelan, aktiviti nyakuman dan nyacemar, hebahan pendidikan kesihatan berkaitan dengan pencegahan jangkitan COVID-19 seperti amalan 3W dan elakkan 3S.
The Health Director General added that it was through active case detection that all of them were found to be infected, and the positive cases were family members and friends of the first case. Meanwhile, Federal Territories Minister Tan Sri Anwar Musa has confirmed a letter ordering the control and sampling activities of COVID-19 on the occupants of Block D at Segari Apartments, Taman Bukit Segar Cheras. In his tweet, he also posted a letter issued by the Cheras Health Office to the Joint Management Body JMB of the apartments, stating that there was a positive case of COVID-19 among residents of Block D, Segari Apartments. On Monday, a letter signed by the public health medical specialist of the Cheras Health Office, Datin Dr. Noria Hajib, viral on social media, informing the affected residents that COVID-19 control and sampling activities would be carried out tomorrow following the reported positive cases. Tan Sri Musa said the true cause of the spread of the cluster was still being investigated, and he did not rule out the possibility of visits during the before the Aidilfitri as the roots of the infections. Dr. Nur Hisham said in addition to active case detection, several outbreak control measures in departments were also carried out. On another matter, Dr. Nur Hisham said the foreign workers' compliance with the Standard Operating Procedure SOP on the Conditional Movement Control Order CMCO is being monitored by an existing committee under the National Security Council MKN. He said the move is aimed at breaking the change of COVID-19 infection in the country as the level of SOP compliance among the foreign workers is not as good as Malaysians.
Jadi sekarang ni hari ini kita juga berbincang di majlis ataupun mesyuarat MKN supaya satu jawatan kuasa yang sedia ada akan melihat kepada kepatuhan pekerja warga asing mengenai SOP yang telah dikeluarkan oleh Kementerian Kesihatan, dan pelaksanaan itu yang penting. Kalau rakyat Malaysia dan juga pekerja warga asing dapat patuh kepada SOP, nescaya kita dapat tamatkan ataupun putuskan rantaian jangkitan COVID-19 dalam negara kita.
On Monday, Dr. Nur Hisham said the actual daily case graph of all COVID-19 cases in the country showed a significant increase in the positive cases involving non-Malaysians since 28 April. He said this was due to foreign import cases as well as the spread of the virus among non-Malaysians at several immigration detention depots and foreign workers in various sectors in the community. COVID-19 screening at prisons or detention depots will be conducted only in facilities where positive cases of the COVID-19 have been detected. Senior Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the screening would not involve those centres where there were no COVID-19 cases. Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri said the principle is the same. COVID-19 screening is only carried out at affected areas such as the Semenyih Immigration Detention Depot DTI and Bukit Jalil DTI. As such, the senior minister said there is no need for screening at other DTI or prisons because there were no cases.
Di Sungai Buloh pun, kerana kedudukan blok, Sungai Buloh ada 8 blok penjara. Oleh kerana satu blok saja yang kena, di blok yang berkaitan saja yang kita buat saringan.
Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri further noted that beginning yesterday, 600 inmates from the affected block in Sungai Buloh Prison would be screened for COVID-19. However, the 700 staff at Sungai Buloh Prison would be tested for COVID-19 regardless of whether they work in the affected block or not. He was commenting on reports that a former inmate of Sungai Buloh Prison, who was released on 13th March, was tested positive for COVID-19. On another note, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri said the country has been free of fake news related to COVID-19 over the past week. He said police and the Malaysian Communication and Multimedia Commission (MCMC) had not opened any investigation papers on COVID-19 fake news for over a week. Commenting further on the matter, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri said to date, 266 investigation papers had been opened by the authorities to investigate claims of fake news on COVID-19. He added that authorities have charged 30 individuals and issued 11 notices, with 18 people having pleaded guilty.
Sebanyak 313 penafian dan penjelasan mengenai berita palsu telah diperjelaskan kepada orang ramai oleh pasukan respon pantas PRP KKMM yang ditubuhkan untuk membantu membendung penyebaran berita palsu berkaitan COVID-19. Oleh itu, sekali lagi saya ingin mengingatkan supaya orang ramai berhati-hati sebelum menyebarkan sebarang kandungan yang diragui kesahihannya.
Coming up shortly, BPN recipients estimated at 10.77 million people, involving more than 11 billion ringgit allocation. Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Abdul Aziz says the total number of Bantuan Prihatin Nasional BPN recipients, including the third group comprising those who made an appeal from 11 to 31st May, is estimated to be 10.77 million, which involves an allocation of 11.5 billion ringgit. He said this represents an additional allocation of 1.5 billion ringgit on top of the initial allocation of 10 billion ringgit.
Kumpulan pertama adalah seramai 8.3 juta penerima yang menerima bayaran secara berperingkat dalam fasa pertama dan kedua. Sehingga 31 Mei, bagi fasa pertama, seramai 7.93 juta penerima telah menerima bayaran berjumlah 5.56 bilion ringgit. Bagi fasa kedua pula, seramai 7.9 juta penerima telah menerima bayaran berjumlah 3.55 bilion ringgit.
The Finance Minister added that the rest of the recipients who have yet to collect the cash payments from Bank Simpanan Nasional branches can do so until 31st December. The second group of BPN recipients, numbering 2.3 million, was announced on 9th May, where 2.08 million of them had received 1.57 billion ringgit of BPN assistance in lump sum payments. On the third group, consisting of those who appealed between 11th and 31st May, Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul said the 170,000 appeals that were received would be reviewed manually. He noted that the outcome will be announced in mid-June and payments will be dispersed at end June. The Kuala Lumpur High Court was told yesterday that former Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Tun Razak should not be convicted based on the Court of Public Opinion in his SRC International Saluran Berita case. Lawyer Farhan Rid, in his submissions, explained how public opinion had linked Datuk Seri Najib and SRC International with fugitive businessman Jolo and his lavish lifestyle, making it hard for the defence to find the needle of proof in the case. Even so, Farhan said the charges framed against the Pekan MP, who allegedly embezzled 42 million ringgit from the Malaysian Strategic Development Company, were serious allegations. Yesterday was the second day of hearing of the oral submissions at the end of defence case. The defence's submission was split into 5 chapters and touched on the cause and purpose of the 42 million ringgit transaction that made up the crux of the charges against the former Premier, and his belief on the monies being an Arab donation, among others. Datuk Seri Najib is facing 7 charges of misappropriating 42 million ringgit in SRC International Saluran Berita funds, comprising 3 counts of criminal breach of trust (CBT), 3 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of abuse of position in relation to the SRC funds. The hearing of the submissions before Justice Muhammad Nazlan Muhammad Ghazali continues today. An Indonesian worker was killed yesterday when part of the kitchen structure under construction collapsed in Taman Silibins Indah, a residential area reportedly plagued by soil erosion since mid-May in Ipoh, Perak. The State Fire and Rescue Department Director Azmi Osman said they received the distress call about the incident at 5:23 p.m. Azmi Osman said a rescue squad of 8 members and an officer from the Meru Raya Fire and Rescue Station was rushed to the scene, and they only took 5 minutes to pull out the body of Junaidi Razak, 40, from under the rubble. He also said that initial investigation found that the victim was working in the kitchen area when the structure collapsed. The body was taken to Raja Permaisuri Bainun Hospital for post-mortem. Meanwhile, house owner Moses James, 58, said he was having a drink with another worker outside the house when both of them heard a loud bang from the kitchen area. He said he believed that the incident was caused by soil erosion, which had caused the slope behind the residents' house to erode and sink since 13th May. Earlier, Housing and Local Government Minister Zuraida Kamarudin urged the Ipoh City Council to take immediate action on the complaints made by Taman Sili bin Indah residents over soil erosion behind their houses. Foreign front, tension mar Paris protests as Floyd outrage goes global. The United Nations UN raised only around half the required $2.41 billion in humanitarian aid for Yemen, ravaged by war and COVID-19, at a donor conference co-hosted by Saudi Arabia in the 6th year of its military intervention. Some $1.35 billion were raised at the emergency virtual conference, which came as aid groups warned the virus could wreak havoc in Yemen after years of conflict and amid crippling funding shortages. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned that without the required funding, more than 30 out of 41 major UN programs in Yemen could close in the next few weeks. But the pledging event fell short of its objective, raising just $1.35 billion from 30 donors countries. Yemen is already gripped by what the UN calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with tens of thousands killed, an estimated 4 million people displaced by war, and tens of thousands afflicted by malnutrition and disease. Now, as the COVID-19 spreads, some 5.5 million people risk losing access to food and clean water in Yemen this year. Guterres said in the de facto capital Aden, reports indicated that mortality rates from COVID-19 were among the highest in the world.
And on that day, we raised 2.6.
Britain's House of Commons on Tuesday abandoned its experiment with remote voting, despite warnings the move will disenfranchise vulnerable lawmakers still staying at home because of COVID-19. The decision was made in a lengthy physical vote where hundreds of MPs slowly filed through the lower elected parliamentary chamber to cast their ballots while keeping apart to avoid the spread of COVID-19.
Was deliberately arranged to be
At the height of Britain's outbreak in April, the Commons broke 700 years of convention by allowing MPs to contribute to debates via video link and to vote remotely. But Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government says that as the nationwide stay-at-home order is eased, normal parliamentary service must now resume. Many MPs objected, including a number from Johnson's own Conservatives, but an amendment seeking to retain remote voting was defeated by 242 votes to 185. More than 39,000 people with COVID-19 have died in Britain, the worst toll in Europe and second highest in the world, and the number is still rising by more than 100 a day. Valerie Vaz from the main opposition Labour Party accused Minister of living in another universe by forcing MPs to attend Westminster. The government's own Equality and Human Rights Commission warned it would place a significant disadvantage to MPs unable to be there, whether because of their age, disability, a health condition or pregnancy. Some 20,000 people defied a ban in Paris on Tuesday to protest the 2016 death of a young black man in French police custody, some clashing with police and using slogans like those used in the demonstrations raging in the US. The protesters rallied outside a Paris court despite a COVID-19 ban on gatherings of more than 10 people, before clashes erupted involving tear gas, rubber bullets, burning barricades and projectiles. The protesters were protesting after the release of two differing medical reports into the cause of Adama Traore's death, whose case has long been a rallying cry against police brutality in France. Many of the protesters drew inspiration from the protest movement in the United States of the police killing last week of George Floyd, an unarmed black man brandishing viral slogans in English such as Black Lives Matter and I Can't Breathe. The protest started in the late afternoon outside the court in northeast Paris before projectiles were thrown and the police used tear gas to disperse the crowd, which scattered into the surrounding streets. Protests were held across France with 2,500 protesters attending a rally in the northern city of Lille, 1,800 in Marseille and 1,200 in Lyon. Local authorities in Siberia have declared a state of emergency after 20,000 litres of diesel fuel seeped into a river, sparking concerns from environmentalists. The World Wildlife Fund WWF environmental group on Tuesday praised local efforts to contain the spill, with the floating dam blocking dangerous pollutants from flowing into a lake near the Arctic city of Norilsk. Satellite images published by the WWF show large red spillages in the Ambarnaya River, and the residents nearby posted videos on social media showing polluted water. The spill was caused last week by a leaking diesel fuel tank at the thermal power plant several kilometers west of Norilsk. Russian mining conglomerate Norilsk Nickel, which owns the facility, said the tank was damaged when supporting pillars began to sink. Norilsk is constructed on permafrost and its infrastructure is threatened by melting ice caused by climate change. Norilsk Nickel Company Director Sergei Lipin said 500 cubic meters of pollutants have been removed by a team of 90 workers whose cleanup efforts were ongoing. The state environmental watchdog said groundwater was not polluted, and the WWF called on it to monitor water quality downstream to prevent toxic products from spreading to nature reserves. Coming up in sports, Formula One confirms ambitious revised 2020 schedule to get racing back on track. The English Premier League has given clubs permission to play friendly matches with strict restrictions before the restart on June 17. According to British media reports, top flight sides made requests to face other teams in preparations for the league's return, which was accepted. Friendlies can be played at either stadiums or training grounds. However, the Premier League has outlined a number of conditions such as negative COVID-19 tests being returned by players involved. Measures have also been put in place to ensure hygiene and social distancing rules are adhered to. Among the rules include clubs being forbidden from travelling for further than 90 minutes, while players must travel in their own cars, possibly in their kits. No official referees will be allowed to officiate games, with members of coaching staff taking charge. The Premier further noted that full risk assessment of the stadium or training ground before games must also be carried out. Championship clubs, meanwhile, have reportedly already been approached about games, and that the EFL will issue guidance to clubs on this later in the week. On to motorsports, the curtailed Formula One season will start with 2 races behind closed doors in Austria on 5th and 12th July, followed by 6 other Grand Prix in Europe. Formula One said it hoped to have between 15 and 18 races in total, with the season being completed in December. The F1 season was thrown into chaos with the cancellation of the traditional curtain-raising Australian Grand Prix in March, only hours before practice was due to begin as the COVID-19 pandemic spread across the world. Last week, the Austrian government sanctioned the season-opening double-header at Spielberg Circuit after F1 organisers presented a complete and professional plan to combat the COVID-19 outbreak. The Hungarian Grand Prix will be brought forward to 19 July before a two-week break, followed by consecutive races in Britain and events in Spain, Italy and Belgium. All will be run without spectators, while participants must adhere to strict health protocols. The blueprint for the rehearsed season features further races in Asia and the Americas in September, October and November before finishing in the Gulf in Bahrain and Abu Dhabi in December. The 2020 season was to have featured a record 22 races. Now it is set to be the shortest campaign since 2009, with races in Australia, Monaco, France and the Netherlands cancelled. Meanwhile, Formula One boss Chase Carey says a race would not be cancelled in the restarted season if a driver or team member tested positive for COVID-19. The F1 chairman and chief executive was speaking after F1 announced the first 8 races of a rescheduled 2020 season starting in Austria on 5th July. The season-opening Australian Grand Prix was called off in March after a McLaren team member tested positive. Carey's remark echoed previous similar statements made by Jean Todt, the president of governing body, the FIA, and the FIA's chief medical officer, Professor Gerard Ceylon. Nevertheless, they raised a series of questions. Among them are the Carey and F1 also wanted the race in Melbourne to go ahead before it was effectively forced off after 7 of the 10 teams refused to race. There are also questions over how F1 could be seen to be controlling any potential virus spread in the event of a positive test, given the close proximity in which individual teams work together. But Carey said he was confident the strict protocols F1 was setting up to minimize the risk with the coronavirus would prove sufficient to allay concerns.
So if photographers would like to make
That's all from us this afternoon in our top story, exit strategy to roll out after COVID-19 cases drop. Join us again for News at 2 at 7 this evening. Till then, I'm Azlani Adani and thank you for watching.